For this episode, we started researching projects that had their origin within the cassette scene and have since grown into sustained artistic careers. We spoke with Dave Kirby, whose experimental noise project Satori started in the underground cassette scene of the late 80s and has continued to develop over the last 40 years. This is cassette culture.
I think the 350 families that actually live down there, because they had their postal address, the caves, the tunnels or whatever it was, yeah.
That was the old railway tunnels that went down to the station used to be.
Yeah, that's right. Where that theme park is, or was, sorry.
In 1984, unemployment among young people in the UK was at its peak, reaching a post-war high of 11.9%. Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister of the Conservative government in power. Dave Kirby and Rob Maycock were living in Margate, a seaside town in Kent, on the southeast point of England. During the summer months, tourists and visitors supported a holiday economy. But during the winter, shops closed and employment dipped further. Dave and Rob found a creative output recording metal in a disused railway tunnel for their noise music project named Psychopath.
I'd known Rob for a couple of years. We were both interested in all sorts of experimental music. One day he came around to my flat with this album and he said, "Dave, you just got to listen to this." And he wouldn't let me talk. So we listened to the side one, turned it over, played side two. And I had never heard anything like that at all. This was Throbbing Gristle's second annual report. And I can remember very clearly, and it's one of those moments that absolutely changes your life, but you don't know it at the time. And I said to him, we could do that. And that was it. That was the beginning of a road that 40 years later I'm still on.
We went down this disused railway tunnel and there was just loads of metal percussion lying around. And because it was in a tunnel, it would echo. And we thought, like, we've really found what we want to do as Psychopath now. And then Dave would go home and then he'd have like loads of tape loops wrapped around his flat. And Dave's flat was like, he'd have like a loop going round and another loop laying on top of that, while he would be recording something into right channel, something into the left channel, somehow out of nothing. He was just a genius at working all these loops together.
I had a little portable tape recorder, a cassette recorder, like a halfway between a Walkman and a dictation machine. Mm. But it took full-size cassettes. Okay. And it had a condenser microphone in it with an automatic level control on it. So you couldn't adjust anything. You could just press record and record it. And it was really weird. It recorded things really weirdly because anything loud, it would squash. Right. And anything really quiet, it would amplify. So you got these really, really weird sounds. And we would go and hit bits of metal and then we'd start recording distortion and interference off of radios. It was just Wild West. Mm. But everything was done on cassettes. We didn't have a 4-track machine or anything. It was literally record something, put something over the top of it and bounce that to another tape and then bounce that to another tape until we had something that was what we thought was finished. When we put our first Satori cassette together, we had a friend who ran a record shop in Canterbury who took a box off them and put a poster up in his window. She's brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
And those cassettes, were those things that you produced those yourself?
We'd recorded little bits of music. We chained them together onto a master cassette, and we just duplicated them, stereo cassette deck to stereo cassette deck, photocopied the covers. Yeah, it was all. That was just how we did it. And probably if you were an indie guitar band, that would be your demo tape that you would send to record labels to get their patronage. The thing with the industrial culture and the cassette culture was that was the end product. That was it. That was it finished.
Who were the first either artists or communities that really embraced what you were doing? Do you have any, points in the journey?
Absolutely, number one would be Gary Mundy at Broken Flag from Ramla. He jumped everything up a massive level when he put a tape out on Broken Flag, because all of a sudden all the people that were on Broken Flag went, "Oh, Gary thinks this is good enough to release."
Right.
There was still kind of a hierarchy within the scene, I think. There were people who were really respected, who did things that everybody else looked up to. But to be honest, any of the labels who said, "Well, I like what you do enough to put a little review in my fanzine and tell people about you," they were game changers for us, because without their help, nobody would have heard of us.
Right.
All over the world, there are these people. And I think because obviously pre-computer, pre-internet days, if you wanted to know about something, it was a lot harder to find out, especially if people said, "Actually, no, we don't want you to see that video. We've banned it. It's not allowed." So, of course, this network and the cassette network was the same as people sharing information. There were all sorts of leaflets and pamphlets of stuff going around, like the anarchy stuff and hunt saboteurs and things like that. All this stuff was kind of networking behind the scene. The original dark web, in a way. The first iteration of Satori kind of ended around early 1987. I moved from Margate to Northampton. And I moved on the Sunday. On the Monday, I went to the job centre. On the Tuesday, I got an interview in a kind of community programme thing. Got the job and started the next Monday. And my boss was a guy called Michael, who was wearing a red lorry, yellow lorry T-shirt at the time. So we immediately hit it off and started talking. And he said, "Oh, my brother's band is playing next weekend. Come and see them. You've got to meet their bass player, because he likes all this weird shit that you do." I went along, saw this band, met Justin Mitchell, and he started Cold Spring maybe a year or so later. He will get a phone number for, Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters and say, "Hey, do you fancy doing the experimental album?" He's got that mindset of just, well, ask. Well, they'll say no, but just ask. Maybe you'll get something.
Give it a shot.
There have been times when I've done different kinds of music. Satori hasn't been a project that's been going all the time. It has had little breaks in it, or big breaks, actually. And there was a period where Justin was actually Satori and I had nothing to do with it for 4 or 5 years. It's kind of an idea and a name. It's not a specific.
Justin Mitchell started Cold Spring Records in 1988, releasing his first home-copied cassette featuring tracks by Psychic TV, The Grey Wolves and Psychopath. The label has continued to thrive and has become a mainstay of the industrial and dark ambient scenes. As Satori began to attract international interest, for a period he found himself taking over the reins.
Dave had a studio in his house, so every Thursday I'd go to Dave's house in the afternoon and we'd record something. And had some dates Satori in Europe, and then Dave kind of disappeared for a few years. I mean, really well. Nobody could contact him, but I was still getting all these offers for gigs. And then a Japanese one came up, and there's a mutual friend, Neil, Cheney, who was in a band called Pessary in the 80s, and he's a great composer. I put some records out by him, his film soundtracks. And I suggested it to him that maybe me and him could get together at Satori, and I would arrange everything, and he came up with a brilliant album which we toured Europe with it as well. And then about 3 or 4 years after that, Dave reappeared, and he really liked the album.
I think, yeah, again, if you can experience loud noise music live, I think you understand a little bit about what we're trying to create, the kind of environment we're trying to create. And you can maybe create that in your head when you listen to it on your earbuds on a bus, say.
Could you talk a little bit about what that is? Like, what is that live experience that gets evoked?
I'm trying to, with the more recent music, I've been trying to make it a little bit more cinematic, I suppose. I want more to be going on, and I want it more, I hate the word, but immersive. And I like people to kind of enter a world where the sound is important rather than visuals. Mm. I would like to think that people could sort of close their eyes and lose themselves in an environment. The last album was called The Woods. That was specifically about kind of a serial killer and a hut in the woods. And I wanted people to feel like they were trapped. It was kind of claustrophobic and threatening, unnerving. The new record is slightly different in that it's slightly more technological, a bit more glitchy and things like that. So that's going to be a different kind of environment.
I think that's a really interesting sort of place to be as an artist. It sounds like you've got a lot of confidence in your decisions and the the aesthetic that you want to.
I think I'm like every artist. I'm 100% genius and 100% useless fraud, and depending on which way the wind is blowing. I think by now I know what I want to do. And I think I've got the capabilities to do what I want to do. And all I can do is do that. And if the rest of the world likes it, fine. If the rest of the world doesn't like it, then fine. I will probably still carry on doing it. I don't feel I need to validate myself anymore.